But the value is not necessarily in the web that our young middle-class kids do. The value of the web is going to be in something very different.
Yeah, and I would really like us to go back and talk about that. How do we get the information necessary on climate change to the areas, to the farmers, to the people who need it through the new media? But first, let's get your question, please.
I'm Don Johnston. I'm a former Canadian politician and former Secretary General of the OECD. I'm very pessimistic, despite all this collaboration, about how it's going to really resolve the climate change challenge. I'm sure we can mobilize millions and millions of people who are against. And I've seen this in Canada, and I've had them in my office, and I'm working with organizations now that are concerned. Even amongst the panelists, I would suggest that you may all be against, as I am, but what are you for? Are you for nuclear, for example, like Jim Lovelock and Patrick Moore, former person of Greenpeace? Are you like Lester Brown? Would you cover Ohio, with windmills? Are you for solar? Are you for carbon capture and sequestration, which I think is an essential ingredient? But Greenpeace, at least in Canada, is against carbon capture and sequestration. But all of them are united in terms of saying act now. And I was on the other end of this as a politician. But acting requires public policy development. It's not enough just to protest. You have to be able to point the way forward. And that, I think, is a much more difficult challenge, no matter how many people you've got out there saying that they're against global warming.
Yeah, I think I disagree pretty fundamentally. I think the key moment is going to be the moment when, as a world, we agree to cap carbon and hence put a price on it. And once that happens, markets will go to work to make an awful lot of things happen much more efficiently than our political class will be able to go about choosing technology. We see what happens in the United States when Congress decides that it wants to play in this arena. We get ethanol, we get whatever. The debate going into Copenhagen is fundamentally about two things. One is, can we cap carbon in such a way that we send a strong enough price signal? And two, can we share resources north to south in such a way that countries of the south are allowed to develop without without using the coal that they have at hand? Those are the two huge decisions. The ones you're talking about are a whole, they'll be going on in every different country as we go forward. But the ones that we have to get to first are the Copenhagen ones about whether or not we're actually going to be serious about cutting carbon or not.
Well, pricing carbon. But there's a lot of debate on that issue.
Of course, if there wasn't debate, it would be easy, but that's where we're headed.
Okay. Don, go ahead, please.
Just a quick comment on that. I mean, what we're for is new forms of energy, and as you saw from some of my examples, those new forms are being developed collaboratively on the web through all kinds of new devices like the X Prize and like contests. Ultimately, this is about energy. And when it comes to public policy, I think we're in the early days of some big changes there. Why doesn't the leader of every one of your countries hold a digital brainstorm, a 3-day conversation of the entire population of the country, and pick climate change as a topic? That millions of people become involved, new people. Your head of state would get great insights that would lead towards policy. It's not about direct democracy. It's not telling that person what to do. It's about getting people engaged. Initiatives would be catalyzed. Architects would self-organize to create a group around retrofitting old buildings, for example. Energy people would come together. That's one of dozens of new initiatives that use the web to change the way that policy is created, could be done. And just on the point about will this be used by bad people? Well, yes. So what's the point? The point that was an articulate call to all of us to get engaged. The future is not something to be predicted, it's something to be achieved. We need to change the attitude towards people about how to organize around this issue. And we have a powerful new tool, and it's natural that we're all going to resist it, because we always do when there's a new paradigm.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, Christine Pearson with...
Sorry, we just get a comment from Florence. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is a fundamental point that we are forgetting about one of the interests of mass collaboration, probably with regards to collecting data, because we have been talking about creating content, but there's simply a question of collecting data, which is necessary to do studies, analysis, and so on. I have one example of a product which is not directly related to global climate change, but you can get the idea. It's a project which was started in Paris and which is using a green watch. It's a watch that can be worn by citizens. And this watch has some sensors to measure the heat, the noise, and the ozone content. The amount of ozone, for example, is displayed on the watch, so the citizen can walk in the street and see the exact content, the level and the amount of pollutants around him. At the same time, the information is geolocalized thanks to a GPS chip in the watch, and the information is transmitted through Bluetooth to the cell phone of the wearer, and then through the cell phone it's sent to a database server somewhere in Paris, and then it's immediately displayed on a website where citizens can watch which information is being collected real time. And of course it can also be downloadable and visible by any scientific who want to do some analysis over time for all the information which is collected. In this type of situation, when I compare to what is happening in Paris, there are only 3 to 10 places, fixed places where this information is collected by the city, compared to this new system where maybe thousands of people will just walk in the street and collect the data real time and make it available to scientists. This information will be available and will not be transformed by the citizen. It will be valuable and accurate information and may be useful. This type of mass collaboration cannot be manipulated and can be very helpful to solve this type of problems.
I only worry about the non-expert citizen wearing the watch and knowing what pollutants are around him and then feeling a bit too claustrophobic or too
the fact is they may not entirely understand what is implied, but at the same time they feel involved and they feel part of the global scheme that is solving the problem.
Okay. Sorry, we've kept you waiting a while. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Christine Pearson, Free Play Foundation. I work in rural Africa. I was speaking to a woman farmer last year, and I asked her about the rains. And she said, the rains, they are funny. I said, what do you mean they are funny? She said, they come too much when you want them to, and when you want them to visit, they stay away. I said, why do you think that is? Thinking she'd say climate change, global warming. She replied, it's God's will. So I think when we sit in an incredibly interesting, complex, intimidatingly complex discussion like this, we forget that the majority of people in Africa do not have access to information. The main way they get it on a regular basis is via radio. The Free Play Foundation has created a wind-up and solar-powered radio, so it democratizes information, whereby people who don't have the money for batteries or don't have access to electricity can get information. We're taking that one step further by making this MP3 enabled. Now we think this will be a really revolutionary device because again it'll be solar or wind up. You'll be able to record information, take the recorded information, put it in a computer and download it. You'll be able to download audio internet content and play it through the device. You'll be able to download 3G and play it through the device. So you'll have actually something similar to an iPod for the poor, with lack of a better name for it, but I think quite an interesting and different way to get democratized information, to get information to really those people who do not, and especially girls. If you ever go into a rural telecenter, you very seldom find a girl sitting at a computer. She's intimidated, she has to work, she has chores to do. It's generally boys. So I think that, we forget about girls and we forget about those who are really rural and don't have this information access.
The story of that woman reminds us, of course, on what the initial question to Mr. Desai was, what do people believe? What is their choice for information?